It's an incredibly impressive showing by the French. More than half the government, at least 15 other ministers besides the Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne, are going there. This was Macron's previous trip. Made a fair amount of noise. I think a lot of people in France read it as somewhat of a failure. It didn't get much in terms of clear results. The contracts weren't signed. And one of the things that are clearly announced today in this trip today and tomorrow is that a number of big contracts will be signed. This is a big upgrading of the first meeting of this high interministerial conference that has been held in 5 years. And then, of course, the context. The context is one where Algeria is in at once a very good position, has a lot to offer the French. The French, both directly, that is Borne and others, Macron even himself, have emphasized that France doesn't really need gas as much as other European countries. It's not a big part of the mix, but they definitely do need gas. But also President Macron has made a big effort, notably last week, to position himself at the leading edge of the non-Russian European countries. And this would be something that he could work on. The Italians had already taken a big role in moving towards moving towards Algeria. Even the Spanish had been forced to kind of eat their hats and really step towards the Algerians. So the Algerians are taking advantage of. They, of course, also need stuff from France. At a basic level, they would love to get grain, wheat, etc. This is something that, like many other developing countries, notably in North Africa, they are suffering from the dramatic decline in exports from Ukraine as well as Russia. So this is something where I think both sides could take advantage of. For the Algerians, it looks very, very good. I think it's a real sign of success for President Tebboune, who kind of came in as somewhat of an unknown or maybe even a gray kind of nomenclature technocrat, if you will, but has really done some impressive stuff, at least in maneuvering Algeria back to the forefront. And they've also really taken advantage of the situation to reposition themselves on the diplomatic and international.
I mean, you touched on this kind of, energy context, which is, of course, key. There's also another backdrop, and that's a particularly troubled past between France and Algeria, notably because of the Algerian War for independence. Is this a sign that France and Algeria are trying to put this behind them, or is it more about it being, there's stuff on both sides that both sides will be able to take from this kind of partnership?
Again, I think you're both. I think the rush forward, or the quick move here in this dramatic trip so soon after President Macron visited Algiers with Prime Minister, apparently her first trip abroad since she was named in official capacity. The memorial, as the French and sometimes the Algerians refer to it, past, that is France's very violent colonization of Algeria, its conquest from 1830 on, its domination for 132 years of Algeria, and then one of the most violent wars of national independence in the context of the era of decolonization. So with Algeria winning its independence, forcing the French to leave in 1962, which was Algeria at that point was officially part of France. All Algerians were officially French citizens at that time. That has had a long, very durable and intense effect on both countries. And Macron really brought that to the fore when he was running for re-election last year, around this time in the fall. He kind of, when he first ran for president, he talked about France's colonization of Algeria in terms of a crime against humanity, which was applauded by many people in Algeria, certainly atypical for a French leader. He really changed course last year around this time. He began to talk about how the Algerian government was living off the dividends of colonization, the memorial dividend, he termed it.
And of course, that set relations between France and Algeria back quite a bit. I'm just thinking about time, Todd, because there's so much to ask you, and this is such a complex issue. France has recently, in a bid to cut ties with its colonial past, moved to English, and we're seeing that being taught more in schools. I mean, it's interesting to see this rapprochement between the two countries, but at the same time, a real want for Algeria to cut certain ties, particularly language ties.
Right, and this might be a chance for the French to stop. I mean, part of the thing is the Algerians might want to do that, turn to English. They don't necessarily have the people to be able to do that. It makes a lot of sense to continue on with close connections in French with the French because there's so many ties between the two countries. The French have really put that into question since President Sarkozy. This is a real moment for that. And the French need, not just for the questions we've raised, but in terms of Mali, we've seen what happened in Burkina Faso. A whole number of countries in Western Africa are moving away from the French. This is Algeria's moment, and they're stepping up, it seems to me, to try to take advantage of that. And the French, too, are taking advantage of that. Morocco's being sidelined. Algeria, because it has gas and oil, has a lot to offer. And so the memorial questions are being brought into that in a refreshing way, I think, I hope. There's a real opening for a historical discussion where Algerian historians could step forward and more discussions led by Algerians could be part of this. So that's really exciting. And the French, too, are recognizing that they have been using this kind of colonial dividend, this memorial dividend for a long time for electoral reasons. Macron did it last year, just as the Algerians have done. So this might be a moment for, on those questions, for a kind of lowering of tensions.